Yo, welcome to Alpha Omega University. I feel like we're having the same issue that we had last time, and it wasn't a problem last time, but today it might make things a little bit annoying. Either way, I'll make sure that the screen is playing the video. I know that when I do this, it's playing, but sometimes it just kind of I don't know, man. It's weird. It's a weird system. And I'm still trying to learn like exactly how it works. So sometimes we have trouble with it, sometimes we don't. It is what it is. So today so you guys are gonna be able to see that, and then yeah, I'm just not gonna be able to have it full screen for you guys, the video. So I apologize for that, but it's okay. We'll figure it out together, one day at a time, right? One day at a time. So I think you guys can see the video enough, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like we're not going to talk about the video. By the way, if you guys don't know, the videos that I choose for the episodes, not for the VOD reviews, but for the episodes, I usually tend to choose videos that are like kind of more recent videos of ZvZ. So the majority of the videos, there are some that are like older, but the majority of the videos that you guys watch are like more recent ZvZs, right? And usually I try to pick within the last week, if not, like I go up to 2-3 weeks at most. I don't really like going over a month old videos. So if you guys are kind of wondering, like, you know, like what kind of like ZvZs are out there happening right now, and I know that a lot of you guys don't spend a lot of time on YouTube, like watching fights of other Zergs fighting and stuff. Maybe you don't have time, you don't have whatever it is. So for those of you that are actually watching the stream, you guys are able to see, you know, some of the more recent fights, and that way, at least you guys kind of get a sense of like who are the guilds that are fighting consistently right now. What are the weapons that are being used a lot, right? Or the tactics, maybe like how the Zergs are playing around. Anyway, that beside the point completely. But I just wanted to let you guys know in case you guys didn't know. And I have started including East server fights more and more, because East server is getting hot. All right, East server, apparently, like there's from what I hear, there's a war going on. There's a war going on in the East server, the very first war in the East server. So I mean, you know how it is. Like everybody goes and says like, oh, there's a war, right? There's a giant war. Oh my God, everybody's at war. And then like a week later, nobody's massing, right? So it's like, we'll see if it's an actual war, right? Because like a week-long fight that's not a war, right? A war takes months, at the minimum, like a month and a half or so. And that's like massing every single day on the timer. That's what a war is. But anyway, so I hear that more and more content is coming out on East server, so that's why I'm adding more and more East server content in here. And one of the really cool things that we're actually starting to see in the East server versus the West server is that the strategies employed, meaning composition of Zerg, which is like the thing that we keep talking about, right? We keep talking about composition of Zerg and what the meta is and things like that, right? So it's very interesting because in the East server, you don't actually have a dominance in melee burst DPS like you have in West. In East server, there's a lot more range DPS. There's a lot more versatility in what they bring. And it doesn't mean that it's bad, right? It doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it's a whole different environment, right? And so because it's a different environment, the players are responding in a different way. So especially for our purposes of like learning ZvZ, understanding it, and being able to progress and get better, it's fucking beautiful because we're able to see the differences in the two servers and how they kind of interact and respond to the influences of the meta, right? So anyway, today's episode is episode 11. All right, it's the last episode of the series that we've been doing the last couple episodes. It's a short series for the Zerg's parts, right? And I've kind of like laid out the Zerg's parts like as a warrior, right? And it's like, so first we talked about the Zerg's armor, and that was the tanks, right? Then we talked about the Zerg's spear, and that was the DPS. And today we're going to be talking about the Zerg's heart and shield. Now, I actually this was actually supposed to be 2 episodes, okay? But I decided to merge them because the Zerg's heart is the healers, and then the Zerg's shield is the supports, right? Now, I decided to merge them because healer, there's not enough versatility in the game for healers for me to justify having an entire episode only on healers. Okay, and I know there's a lot of healers of you guys out there and stuff that you guys, no, what do you mean? I want you to pay more attention to healers. Like, don't worry. We will have an episode dedicated to healers. We will. Like, it's on, I think it's on schedule. It's like the last episode on the schedule. Anyway, so we will be talking more about healers. Don't get me wrong, but remember what the series that we're doing right now is more talking about the layout and the builds and the strategies that healers employ in broader sense, right? And so when we talk about that, let's be realistic here. There's not a lot of options for healers. If you want to play healer in this game, I mean, you have only a couple options. You have like Fallen and Hollow Fall, and that's pretty much it for like the holy, right? And then if you're gonna go and be like a nature healer, then you have a couple options like Wild and Blight, maybe Rampant. But then beyond that, like, and all three of those are kind of interchangeable, right? Like, people don't really see a big difference between them. Personally, there's a huge difference between them. By the way, personally, I believe there's a huge difference between Blight, Wild, and Rampant. But we're not gonna go into that today. Because we're just going over broad strategies and broad generalizations about the Zerg. The next episode on healers will be a detailed episode. And with that, I also want to mention, so tomorrow we have another episode. I know tomorrow's reset day, so I know it's going to be hard for you guys to tune in. I know a lot of you guys are going to be out there doing reset day and all that. Just know that I will. Yo, Litorian, appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you. By the way, I'm not going to be on top of the chat as much today, only because the problem I had at the beginning of the stream with the video, right? Like, you guys saw that the video wasn't starting, right? So in order to fix that, I don't have access to the chat, as much access to the chat as I would like to. So I'm not going to be as much on top of the chat today. So, but I will try to get through all your messages. I'll look back and all that. Anyway, so yeah, so tomorrow, I know that it's reset day, right? Go to reset day, do whatever you're going to do, right? Whatever. But I'm telling you, you do not want to miss the episode tomorrow. So I upload the videos. So if I don't upload it by tomorrow night, usually I upload it by the next day, to be honest, because it takes time to download, edit it and then upload it. So usually it'll be up in 2 days from now, right? And so when that video does go up on the YouTube channel, or it'll be on the Twitch because it stays on Twitch for like 5 days or something like that. Definitely, you guys gotta watch that, right? That's the episode. It's titled like settings and ZvZ mechanics. I think it's called settings and ZvZ mechanics, right? The settings part is like, it doesn't really matter. We're gonna brush over it, but the ZvZ mechanics part is extremely important. I cannot tell you guys enough how important that episode is. And I know I tell you guys that the episodes, I'm making them, between 1 and 2 hours long, right? I don't want to go over 2 hours. I have a feeling that we're gonna go over 2 hours with that episode, simply because ZvZ mechanics is such an incredibly important part of the game. And it needs to be understood properly, right? Because if you don't understand it properly, you're not going to be able to make proper decisions on what to wear, how to play, how to move around the map, and things like that if you don't understand ZvZ mechanics. I'm telling you, like, if there's any episode you absolutely cannot miss from the entire schedule that we have right now, it's that one, right? You guys have to be there for that one. And if you can't be there because it's reset day or whatever, then make sure you guys watch it afterwards in YouTube or Twitch. So, all right, anyway, that was a lot. I know we had a long introduction today. There was a lot of things to put out there. Again, on Monday, it's going to be VOD Review Monday, just as usual. And then the next thing after that is going to be the individual components of the Zerg that we're going to be talking about, like clump tanks. They're going to have a whole episode on clump tanks. We're going to have a whole episode on disengaged tanks, a whole episode on healers, a whole episode on different types of DPS, things like that. Those episodes, we're actually going to be looking at players and the videos, and we're going to be reviewing things that players actually do with those roles, right? I know some of you guys have been talking to me and asking me like, hey, why don't you do a little bit more review of like the individual weapons of the game? That's exactly what we're going to be doing in the next series. So that's going to start next week. All right. So we got a good plan ahead of us. All right. We got a good plan ahead of us. I'm also working on the updating the schedule to add more episodes. So stay tuned for that. There's a lot of episodes that I'm already getting, but if you guys have any episodes in mind that you would like to have me do, let me know, and I will try to get it as soon as possible. I know one of the episodes that many people are telling me to do is castles and territories, right? So like sieging a castle and sieging a territory, or defending, right? Defending. And so that is one episode that I'm definitely gonna do. Okay, I'm just letting you guys know that right now. I'm definitely gonna do an episode on that, but that's gonna be a little bit farther out. So, all right, today's episode 11, the Zerg's Heart and Shield. All right, so I already told you what we're going to talk about. It's going to be healers and supports, right? I'm just going to jump into it because we already spent too much time talking about everything else. So there are 3 healer types in this game. All right, there are 3 healer types in this game, and again, there are other things that are a little bit like in between those, right? There's mixes of them, but in general, healers will fall between these 3 types, and that's going to be burst healers. I call it like hot healers, right? Hot, HOT. Right, heal over time instead of like dot, like damage over time, right? It's hot healers, right? So burst healers, hot healers, and pocket healers. All right, those are the 3 main strategies of healer types that we have in the game. Doesn't matter what weapon you use or how you decide to heal, you're gonna fall in one of those 3 categories. Jotita says that should be a good episode talking about castle defensive and offensive. Yeah, we're definitely going to be talking about both sides, offensive, defensive, castles and territories. Yeah, I'm gonna do both in one episode, most likely, unless it's like too much, then I might have to split it in 2, but we'll see. All right, so we're gonna start off with the first type of healer. This is the healer type that everybody already knows, right? It's the most common one. Burst healers, right? Burst healers is the most common, absolutely, by far in the game. And the weapon is Fallen Staff, right? But aside from Fallen Staff, we also have the Hollow Fall, right? Now, the Hollow Fall is considered burst because of the cooldown. It's still kind of high enough where you can't really just say, oh no, it's completely and totally not, not heal over time. But also it's because it is a burst, right? It is one burst. It just pops and it gives it. Now, I know you can say that Hollow Fall can be kind of like a pocket healer. And I understand why you would say that. I've seen Hollow Falls play as pocket healers, but they don't tend to do as well as something like a Divine Staff, right? Divine Staff is like the #1 thing for pocket healers, but we'll get into that in a minute. So for burst healers, we're focusing on Fallen and Hollow. Okay, Hollow Fall. So the helmets that you're going to use in general for healers, okay, is going to be Night Helm if you're going to be running a Fallen, or you can run a Cleanse, the Cleanse hood. Literally any leather hood, right, has Cleanse nowadays, so you can literally run any leather hood as long as it has Cleanse, okay? Why do you need a Night helmet or a Cleanse? And by the way, you can also technically use like the face scale hat, right? But I kind of feel like it's a little overkill with a healer. All right, so Night Helm or any Cleanse is like the 2 primary things that you should run as a burst healer. Okay, the reason is because what is the job of a burst healer? The burst healer, their job is to save the clumps that the enemy is trying to delete, right? So it's emergency heals. That's really what it is. It's emergency heals. Which means what? That you need to be in position to be able to reach that clump. You can't just be like, oh, they're clumping my Zerg on the other side of the map. I got to run over there and then drop a heal. You're going to be too late. This is like an instant reaction thing, right? The best healers, the best burst healers in the game are the ones that are able to react quickly and the ones that know positioning better than everybody else. Okay, so if you're a healer and you're trying to figure out, like you're a burst healer and you're trying to figure out how do I become better as a burst healer? Well, you have to learn better positioning, and you have to be able to respond quickly. Okay, so just being able to move quickly and be in the places where you know the enemy is going to engage, it's the most important thing, because you need to drop those heals as emergency heals to make sure that nobody dies, right? So that's, again, this is very, very simple because everybody understands it, right? It's very easy to understand emergency heals. It'll get harder as we get down. So why is Night Helm so important? Well, because if the enemy is clumping so again, so you got to position yourself, right? You got to position yourself close enough to where the enemy's going to engage. Otherwise, you're gonna be too far away and you won't be able to drop your heal right away, right? I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? But if you're so close to that potential clump, then what's gonna happen is when the enemy does clump, they're gonna use like an air compress, they're gonna use a hand of justice, they're gonna use maybe even a camland. I'm starting to see camlands coming back, right? I told you guys, camland was good. It's been good all along. I'm starting to see it. Not a lot, but I'm starting to see it on the field. Anyway, so they're gonna throw something that clumps, right? Well, guess what? If you have Night Helm, you can't be pulled. And if you can't be pulled, that means that air compress won't work on you. And if you can't be pulled, that means Hand of Justice doesn't work on you. And if you can't be pulled, that means that Camland doesn't work on you. So how is the enemy going to clump you? They can't. It's just that simple. They can't. So the thing is like you see it coming, you pop your Night Helm, and then suddenly you don't get caught in the clump. So then you don't get caught in the clump, and then you're able to channel your E. Also because you don't get interrupted by knockbacks, right? Night Helm is incredibly important. Now, this is why I say like you can kind of use phase scale, but it doesn't work the same way because phase scale doesn't stop the enemy from clumping you. And if you're gonna be kind of close to where the enemy's gonna make a clump, I mean, unless you have like absolute perfect positioning all the time, which by the way, like nobody has perfect positioning all the time, right? And if you think you do, then I don't know what to tell you. So essentially what I'm saying is every once in a while, you're going to get caught in shit as a healer. And that's going to be normal. But this is why you need to have either a Night Helm or a Cleanse Hood. The Cleanse Hood, why? Because if you do get clumped, pop that cleanse right away and get the fuck out of there as quickly as possible, right? So that's why we use these helmets for the healers. Now, I know other people are starting to use other helmets, especially like Assassin Hood, man. Like it's like I see Assassin Hood on literally every possible build in the game. It's so stupid. Okay, but listen, I like at the end of the day, you can only do so much when your Zerg leader is telling you have to wear a fucking Assassin Hood, right? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. Okay. So anyway, so the next part is going to be the chest piece. Now the chest piece for healers is always going to be cleric. Okay, it's gonna be cleric robe, no matter what. Now, I've seen people try to do different things like, God, what's the Ava robe, the Avalonian robe? What's it called? The Avalonian robe. You guys can drop it in the chat. The one that knocks people back. All right. So I've seen people use that one as healers, and listen, it's not bad. Okay, it's not bad. Like that's the truth. It's not bad. But the problem with it is that it's not optimal, right? Because again, with a cleric, you have a very strong defensive. Now, if you're gonna go and use the other one, Robe of Purity, you're right. Thank you, Filbert. So yeah, like if you're gonna go and use the Robe of Purity that knocks people back, it's like, okay, you're gonna be knocking people away from you. But at the end of the day, if you get clumped, they're gonna clap you regardless, right? Like you're having a Robe of Purity. It's like, oh, I'm gonna knock them back. Okay, congratulations. You're still gonna get hit by like literally everybody else, right? Like there's no way for you to actually like completely stay safe. So what I'm saying is, think about the utility, right? That is very, very important. It's utility. People forget how important utility is in this game when they go and decide to put on some other shit on. Is because the utility that you're trying to bring doesn't make sense for your role. Your role as healer is to make sure the fucking heals fall down, right? Make sure the heals are on point, right? That's your job. How is knocking people back going to help you achieve that? It's not going to help you achieve it, right? It doesn't make any sense, right? So Cleric Robe does it perfectly because Cleric Robe actually goes and gives you a very strong defensive. Now, there are people that say, oh, well, you know, Cleric Robe can be purged. Okay, motherfucker, like if you're purged, you're probably silenced as well because you probably got hit by a heavy mace, right? So if you're purged and silenced, I don't give a fuck what you're wearing. You're not going to heal anything, right? But guess what? If you had a cleanse, you can cleanse out of the silence, right? So Cleric Robe just makes sense. And this is kind of unfortunate. I'll tell you guys the truth. This is kind of unfortunate because healers don't have options, right? Like I'll tell you the truth. Like for all three healer types, we have burst healers, hot healers, and pocket healers, right? For all three types, it's literally just cleric. That's it. It's just cleric, right? Like there's literally nothing else. It's cleric. Everything else doesn't make sense. Okay. Now, again, don't get me wrong. The like robe of purity and stuff like that. If I'm remembering correctly, wait, you know, don't quote me if I'm wrong, right? Don't fucking quote me if I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure it also makes you immune to certain CCs, right? If I'm correct, can you guys let me know in the chat? It makes you immune to certain CC. I think it's stuns, roots, and slows. Unless I'm high and I'm remembering something else. Anyway, so that is useful. Yes, because it helps you channel your E, right? It helps you channel your E. But remember, this is why you gotta have other pieces like Night Helm in your kit, right? Don't forget that you need a defensive. Don't get so focused on trying to make sure nobody interrupts you that you literally become like one-shottable, right? Where you literally can do absolutely nothing to save yourself. Okay, so that's very, very important. Latorian says exactly, makes no sense. Also useless in ZvZ because of the amount of night helmets. Well, actually, a lot of people don't use night helmets nowadays, man. I think night helmets are very, very powerful, but not enough people use them. It used to work only for enigmatics, but with the new cloth mist helmet, it is useless. Yeah, and we'll talk about enigmatics after, because we're going to be talking about supports after we talk about healers. So yeah, you're definitely right. So for the boots that we use for the burst healers, right? Generally speaking, there's 3 boots that make sense, right? Number 1 is Scholar Sandals. Now, why Scholar Sandals? Because they allow you to move around the field without getting CC'd, right? Similar to Graveguard boots, but you actually have a run that is a little bit faster than like Graveguard boots. The other one is Graveguard boots, right? Because it does the same exact thing. But Scholar Sandals also gives you mana, and healers will run out of mana very, very, very quickly. Okay, like that's just what's gonna happen. Especially good healers, man. I'll tell you guys the truth. The best healers are always the first ones to run out of mana in every ZvZ. I promise you. So if you're a healer and you see that your mana is always kind of like topped off or mostly topped off, you're doing something wrong. I promise you, you're doing something wrong. Okay, unless like the fight is like really slow and there's like one engagement every 5 minutes or something, right? But I'm talking about like a back and forth fight. If you're not out of mana by the 3rd engage, you're doing something wrong. I promise you. So that should be an indicator for you healers out there that, you know, you need to do more Qs, more Ws, more heals in general, right? You use more of your skills more often. So Scholar Sandals is very good for that because it also regenerates mana. I already mentioned Graveguard boots. That's also makes sense. It just doesn't regenerate mana. It's also a little slower. The difference between Scholar Sandals and Graveguard boots, though, is that Graveguard boots you don't have to channel, whereas Scholar Sandals you do. You have to channel it. So if you want to cast anything else like a Q, W, or E, anything like that, you have to cancel the Scholar Sandals sprint, right? Which sometimes is not optimal, right? So the other boots that can also be used, and I think someone mentioned it in the chat. Latorian, there. Latorian mentioned in the chat. He said mercenary shoes, right? So that's the 3rd one. That's the 3rd one right there. Is mercenary shoes. Now, mercenary shoes, I understand it for some healers, especially burst healers, because remember, pay attention, right? What is the goal, right? You need to have emergency heals, which means you need to position yourself close to potential clumps, which means you're putting yourself close to where you might get clumped, right? Like that's just inherent in being a burst healer. And so just like the same logic for using Night Helm or cleanses is the same exact logic for using mercenary shoes. If you do get caught in the clump, you can merc shoe out of there, right? And then you're gonna survive. Merc shoe out of there and drop a heal right on top of the clump. It's gonna be perfect. Okay, so again, these things enable you to do your job safely, but at the same time to do it properly, right? So that way you're not dying all the time. Okay. The positioning for burst healers, generally speaking, you're going to be in the back, but not completely far back. You have to be able to see the enemy a little bit. And the reason for it is because you need to know where the enemy's positioned to know where the enemy's going to engage, right? If you don't see it, If you don't see the enemy, then what's going to happen is you're not going to know where they're going to engage, and now you're just positioning yourself wherever you think you should be. But that doesn't make any sense. You need to know where the enemy is possibly going to engage for you to be able to position yourself in order to heal that spot. If you see a group of your guys clumping somewhere, make sure you start walking to it, because the enemy is probably about to engage it, right? It's these things that healers need to pay attention to. And I'll tell you guys the truth. Healers are the worst when it comes to understanding ZvZ flow. And the reason is because so many healers think that they don't need to look at the enemy. They think that they don't need to assess the enemy and what they do and how they're fighting, right? So many healers think that all they have to do is just stand in the back line, only surrounded by friendlies, allies, and then heal wherever the heal is needed. That is so wrong, right? That is exactly how you become a below average healer and stay as a below average healer forever, okay? So the biggest tip I can tell you guys as healers is make sure you guys understand what the enemy's doing. That means you need to step up, right? You need to step up a little bit. Now, don't step up too much. You're a clothy at the end of the day, right? But this is why things like cleric robe are important and not fucking the robe of purity. Because the cleric robe will give you that defensive, because you have to be a little bit farther forward, a little bit in danger, right? Because you need to anticipate the enemy engages. You can't just say, oh yeah, the enemy is going to engage now. It doesn't matter to you. For healers, it doesn't matter when the enemy Zerg engages. For healers, what's important is where the enemy is going to engage, right? So for disengaged tanks, it's more important to look at when the enemy is going to engage versus where. And healers, it's all about, and a lot of supports too, it's all about where the enemy is going to engage, right? So you guys have to pay attention to all those things, and you have to understand the dynamics of the ZvZ in order to position yourself appropriately. All right, this is why you need a cleric robe, so that you don't die up in the front, right? This is why you need scholar sandals, because you're gonna be running through a bunch of CC and shit, but also you're gonna need some mana, right? Mercenary shoes make sense. Night helmet makes sense, so you don't get clumped and die, or a cleanse, so in case you do get stunned or something, you can cleanse and heal, right? Healers are so important, especially burst healers. They're so important to the game, but so often people just don't understand the how do I say this? People just don't understand how healers are supposed to play, and so they just tell healers, stand far back, don't worry about the enemy, only worry about the allies. And that is very, 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 very wrong. Okay, that is very wrong. As a healer, you need to understand the enemy, because you need to be able to position yourself, all right, as a burst healer. All right, so that's it for burst healers. Let's move on to hot healers, heal over time healers. All right, so hot healers, they have the weapons Wild Staff, Blight, Great Holy, and Rampant. Now you can say, what? Great Holy? What? Great Holy? Yeah, Great Holy's heal is not bad for its cooldown. It really isn't. And if you use a pork omelet, reduces the cooldown even more. Great Holy can actually be a semi-decent heal over time healer if you play it as a heal over time, as opposed to playing it as a burst, which is the mistake that a lot of people have when playing Great Holy. Okay, but generally speaking, yeah, I'm talking about Wild and Blight and Rampant. Those are also very, very good. I mean, you guys know those three, right? And you won't argue it as much as you would argue Great Holy. But the thing about it is, so many people are like, oh no, Blight is just better than Wild, right? Blight is so much better than Rampant. The truth is it's not. It's not. The heals of Wild and Blight are pretty similar. Okay, they're about the same. There's not a huge difference in the amount of heal you get with Wild versus Blight. Okay, there's not a huge difference. Here's a big difference though. Blight forces you to channel that E, which means that during the time that you're channeling that E, what are you not doing? You're not healing with your Q. Maybe you're not cleansing with the W or using the breeze with the W, whatever W you decide to run. Okay, but you're not using your Qs and Ws with the Blight. And you're like, oh, well, it makes me unstoppable. Like they can't stun me or whatever. It's like, okay, congratulations, you stay safe, but that doesn't matter. You know how else you can be safe? By dropping the Wild Staff far forward where you don't need to stand. That also keeps you safe, don't it? Right? So I can't tell you how many times I see Blight players run up to the front trying to heal the front, and then they end up dying. right? They're like, oh, well, I died, but I was doing my job healing the front line. It's like, that's not your job, right? Your job is to heal over time, and going and risking yourself by running to the front, it doesn't make sense. Like right now in the video, we're watching fucking Blightstaffs, right? It's like, that's the point, right? So right now there's a big push for Blightstaff over other staffs, but I'm telling you guys, Wild is very good. Now, Blight is better than Wild when you have a Zerg that just continues to push. Okay, like if you're just a full push Zerg, you don't actually hold chokes, you don't stabilize, you don't slow down. It's just a straight push Zerg. Then Blight's better than Wild. Why? Because you get to move the heal, right? Wild, you place it down and that's it. It's stuck there, right? But Blight, you actually get to move it with the Zerg. So in those scenarios, it's better. But most Zergs don't do that. Most Zergs fight, in straight lines against each other. And then, they go back and forth and then eventually they push each other, right? But Wild is so much better in those senses. Also, Wild being ranged, you don't put yourself in harm's way. But anyway, those are the weapons, right? And the same thing goes for Rampant too. Rampant's also very, very good, especially when fighting on chokes. So Rampant, Great Holy, Blight, and Wild. Those are the four main heal over time heal weapons, all right? The helmets that they use, it's going to be similar, right? You're going to use any cleanses is good. Why? Because again, it's the same idea. Right, it's the same idea that we were talking about with burst healers. The difference is that you don't have as long of channels. I mean, Great Holy does, but you don't really need Night Helmet as much. But Night Helmet is still good because you need it in the Zerg period, right? Cleanses are also good because if you're stunned, you can't be healing, okay? And you need to be dropping heals as much as possible. Now, one of the ones that I know a lot of people don't really like nowadays, and also because we have more options, but I don't know. It's kind of like we change tactics, right? One of the biggest things that was used before with healers that were nature healers. Okay, this was a while back, right? This is literally years ago. Was Druid Cowl, right? Druid Cowl is the one that you drop a mana pool and like in the ground, like you step on it and you get more mana, right? So the Druid Cowl was actually really, really important back in the day, okay? Most people, and I do mean like 99.99% of healers now, do not run Druid Cowl. And it's very simple why. It's because things like Chariot are more prevalent, and also because less and less people run Fort Sterling capes and more people are running Limhurst capes. So what I'm saying to you is, instead of running Druid Cowl, people are choosing to get rid of their cleanse from their Fort Sterling cape, and instead adding a Limhurst cape. Right now, the Chariot is one thing, right? Chariot, I mean, it's good, but in general, I mean, if you ask me what I prefer to have, a Behemoth or a Chariot on my Zerg, I'd say Behemoth 9 times out of 10, right? 9 times out of 10. If you ask me a Beetle or a Chariot, I'd say Beetle. Eagle or Chariot, I'd say Eagle, right? Now, the thing is that nowadays we use Chariot more and more and more, and we think, oh yeah, no, it's super important. Well, it's only important because the entire Zerg does not have the ability to sustain their mana, so you're using the Chariot to try to help sustain mana. It's not a bad idea, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad idea. I'm just saying it's a different style, and with every different style you have things that you gain and things that you lose, right? And so the things that you're losing is you're essentially, because the Chariot on its own cannot top you off. It really can't. So you're gonna need things like the Limhurst cape, and so you're losing a cleanse on your Fort Sterling cape. Now you can say, oh, okay, but I get to keep a cleanse on my helmet. Yeah, that's true, right? So if you do it that way, then you still get to keep a cleanse. That's fine. But now you don't have another Night Helm in your Zerg because that healer could have ran a Night Helm. So this is why I need you guys to understand the back and forth that goes between every decision that somebody makes when they decide to gear up, right? And this is really what I'm trying to highlight with this series, is that there's pros and cons to literally every piece of armor that you wear. And it really affects, right? Now, let's move on to the chest pieces for heals over time. Chest piece is simple. It's Cleric. I mean, like I said, it's going to be Cleric for all of them. It's going to be Cleric. I mean, if you guys know something that I don't know, then go ahead and let me know. Let me know in the chat. But from my understanding, it's just Cleric, man. I mean, nothing else beats Cleric. The defensive that Cleric provides, right? Plus the heals. The boost in heals when you do pop that Cleric robe, it's great. So Cleric robe just makes sense. The boots are going to be similar. Again, same thing: Scholar, Mercenary, Graveguard boots. And I'll tell you guys the truth. For Pocket Healer, it's the same thing: Graveguard, Scholar, Mercenary shoes. See, this is the thing. I said this earlier, right? Healers don't have a lot of options, and this is why I told you guys, like, it kind of sucks, right? That they don't have more options that work for them. They just don't, right? Every other role in the game has plenty of options to choose from. Tanks have plenty of options. DPS have plenty of options. Supports have plenty of options, right? In fact, supports have so many options. They can literally go fucking, some of them can go cloth. Some of them can go plate, right? I mean, supports are, you know, they're very versatile. But healers, it's like you literally need Cleric Robe, and then the boots, you need like Mercenary shoes, Graveguard boots, or Scholar sandals. Outside of that, it's like there's no flexibility, right? And then on top of it, 99% of the time, they'll tell you, oh no, healers need to be Fallen. And if you're not going to be Fallen, you're going to be Blight. So it's like you're stuck to choosing between those two, right? And in the helmet, you don't even have that much option either, because they go and say, oh, well, we need cleanses in the Zerg, so you're going to run a cleanse. Or we need night helms in the Zerg, so you're going to run a night helm, right? So the truth is that healers get fucked in this game so hard. But that's because that's by design, right? There's not a lot of other options out there for healers to use that are going to work really, really well, right? It's unfortunate, but this is also why I told you guys I can't do a full episode on healers. So, generally speaking, for heal over time healers, the tips that I can give you guys is, first of all, positioning. Let the burst healers position themselves in the middle of the Zerg, okay? Like not necessarily in the middle, like in the front or the back, just in the middle in general. Heal over time healers, Wild, Blight, Great Holy, Rampant, you guys should be on the flanks. You guys should be watching the flanks, because the flanks are not going to be hit by a full engage very often. But on the flanks, what is happening on the flanks? On the flanks, you have skirmishes, right? Where you have auto attacks, Qs and Ws, that kind of shit, right? How do you defeat skirmisher damage? Like auto attack Q and W, right? How do you defeat that? You defeat it with heal over time. Okay, so having these heal over time guys standing on the flanks is gonna help the flanks survive and press onto the enemy a lot. It's very, very important. Just because you're a Blight doesn't mean you need to run into the middle of the Zerg and be like, I'm gonna heal everybody here. No, try to do your job on the flanks. It's very, very important. Flanks are super important. All right, so another thing is you gotta stay mobile, okay? And you just keep yourself moving. Don't and this kind of goes for everybody, right? Don't just stay in one spot. Like if I say stay on the flanks, okay, that's great. But don't just stay on like the west flank. Move between the west flank to the east flank every once in a while. See where the Zerg needs a little bit more help. All right? Make yourself more available to your Zerg. But here's one of the things that I do gotta say is, and this is what I already mentioned with Blight, right? Don't try to burst heal clumps. You're not a burst healer. If you see a clump, don't be like, oh, I'm gonna run in there and heal that shit. No, it's not your job. It's the Fallen's job. Your job is to sustain the Zerg, right? So that after the enemy hits you hard, and then you guys are getting pushed back, they're going to rely on you to be able to stabilize the Zerg. You know, all those times that the caller goes and says, oh, we need to stabilize here, stabilize here. What they're actually saying is give time for the heal over time healers to top people off and survive. That way you guys can continue the fight. Otherwise, you guys are going to fall apart. I can't tell you how many times I've seen Zergs die simply because they don't have enough nature healers under Zerg that can help them sustain. So all you do is you engage them, and then 30 seconds later you engage them again, and 30 seconds later you engage them again, and they slowly die one by one. Why? Because even though they had good supports and everything, they're still taking so much damage that the burst healers cannot out heal, right? You're just putting more damage out than the enemy can heal, and it's all because they don't run enough of these heal over time healers. Okay, so the last one that we're gonna talk about is the pocket healer. All right, now the pocket healer, I already mentioned it. It's Divine. I mean, Divine Staff is pretty much the only pocket healer that I can think of. I mean, I know that we can have pocket healers, things like, again, like the Hollow Fall, right? Some people have tried running the one-handed holy healer. Like, I don't understand. But like, really, it's Divine. Why? Because Divine gives a giant fucking shield. And when you use it with Cleric Robe, it's the shield, it's even more massive. Now, this is one of the ones that I will say there are some people that are experimenting with a Paladin type role, okay, where they go and have a Divine Healer running something like Adjudicator armor, okay? And the thing is like they go and they drop a Judy, and then they go and heal people on top of that Judy, right? And the heal, it's not as much as a Cleric Robe healer, but it's good enough, especially if you're just a pocket healer and you're only responsible for keeping one person alive. It tends to work okay, right? Because also on the W, they'll run, I think it's called Holy Blessing. I think it's called Holy Blessing. You guys can correct me in the chat if it's not. But it's basically the one that gives like 15% more heal received and a little bit of like resistances, something like that, right? So it's like that, between that and like Adjudicator, then suddenly the heals are actually pretty strong, okay? And so that's the point, right? Divine is actually one of the ones that is starting to be more experimented on as a Paladin style healer. But generally speaking, yeah, I mean, it's going to be Cleric for the most part. And like I said before already, it's going to be Knight Helmet. It's going to be Cleanse. But I do know that some pocket healers use Graveguard Helmet. Okay, Graveguard Helmet takes away like 15% of your HP and regains 25% of the HP of somebody else. I know most people use it for like Fame Farm, but it as a pocket healer, it does work. It does work. But yeah, the boots are also going to be the same thing. Scholar sandals, mercenary shoes, graveyard boots. So that's it. I mean, I'm not going to go into too much more for healers because the truth is they don't have options. They just don't. I think I've made that point clear. They just don't have options. They're kind of screwed. So now, general tips for healers. Okay, remember, without healers, the Zerg dies. All right, it's just that simple. If the Zerg runs out of healers, if the healers die, everybody else is gonna die after that. I don't give a damn how good a support you have. I don't give a damn how good your DPS is. I don't give a damn how good your tanks are. If you don't have healers, you will lose. It's just that simple. Okay, so because of that, right, you guys, the healers, you guys are literally the beating heart of the Zerg, right? Without a heart, we're dead, right? So you guys cannot go and sacrifice yourselves. You guys get to choose who lives and who dies, right? You get to choose who lives and who dies. You get to be like the guardian angel, right? But when you have to choose who lives and who dies between you and everybody else, it's everybody else. Because if you have healers, those other people that died, at least the healers may be able to buy enough time for them to re-gear and come back. But if all the healers die, the rest of the Zerg cannot survive long enough for the healers to re-gear and come back. Okay, so it's very, very important. At the same time, when you're the guardian angel, right, you get to choose who lives and who dies. Okay, at the same time, you have to understand this as a healer. And for everybody else who's not a healer, take note of this. This is very important. And I really, really like this is kind of like a joke, but it really is true. Okay, the healers in this game will literally choose who lives and who dies. And if you decide to be an asshole to one of your healers in your guild or whatever, I promise you that motherfucker will let you die on the field whenever he gets a chance to choose whether you live or die. And that's the truth, okay? But at the same time, they're choosing who lives and who dies based on who they know is a better player. So if you think, oh, I'm never getting heals for my healers suck. Maybe it's not that they suck. Maybe it's that you suck. And so the healers know that you suck and you don't contribute as much as the other players, right? So they heal the other players that contribute more to the Zerg than you, right? It's really, really that simple. So if you want to receive heals, number one, be nicer to your fucking healers, all right? But number two, get better at the game. Become an asset that the Zerg knows that if you die, they're in trouble, right? And it's not just the caller, it's everybody in the Zerg. Every Zerg has this 1, 2, 3, 4 players that are difference makers, right? This one DPS that literally gets 70% of all the kills every day, right? This one tank that stops all the enemy engages, right? There's those people that are very important to the Zerg that the healers will make sure that they never die. Become one of those people, and then suddenly you'll realize that your problem with heals is over. Now, healers, on your part, I have to tell you guys, okay? It's not always your fault, okay? So many times, you're gonna get blamed for everything that happens in a fucking ZvZ. Okay, literally, everything. It's like, we didn't win because our DPS sucked. That must mean that our healers fucked up, right? We were late to the CTA because of whatever. We decided to mass late. It was the healers' fault. They made us, you know, they made our Swift Claws run slower, right? Healers will always get blamed, okay? But it's not always your fault. Understand that, healers, understand that so much. It's not always your fault, okay? Now, I will tell you guys another thing, healers. You're gonna get blamed all the time, right? But remember, healer, like I said earlier, it's the most important role in the game. And it's also the role that people least like to play. So therefore, if you're a healer, guess what? If everybody's blaming you all the time, it doesn't matter that much because they're most likely not gonna kick you out of the guild anyway. Why? Because they can't afford to lose healers. Healers are so important, right? So, listen, I'm just being completely truthful and honest with you guys, right? You guys have a lot of power, a lot more than you guys realize as healers. Because you guys get to choose who lives and who dies, and because of that, you guys also get a lot of the flack, right? When people go and blame you for their mistakes all the time. But at the same time, you can get away with a lot of bullshit that you do. That doesn't mean go and be a piece of shit. That doesn't mean go and not play properly. Okay? Take responsibility. It's important to take responsibility and to get better. But don't start getting all hateful of everybody because they're blaming you because you're a healer. I can't tell you how many healers stop playing healer simply because people always blame them and get mad at them. Okay? Just don't take it seriously. Move on with your life and just continue to get better little by little. All right? So that's it. That's it for the healers. All right? Let's move on to the supports. I know a lot of you guys are a little more interested in the supports than healers because, again, healers don't have a lot of options, right? So, the supports are very interesting. They're a very, very interesting a topic to talk about because so often we say, oh yeah, that's a support, right? Just like how I was talking to you guys about the tanks, how we used to be like, you know, like 3 years ago, there was no such thing as a D-tank, right? Like 3 years ago, if you had said disengage tank, nobody would understand what you're talking about. I mean, they kind of would understand like, oh, okay, you're a guy that stops the enemy or whatever, you know? But like, it wasn't really a known thing, right? Over time, we started dividing up the tanks and all that. DPS, same thing, right? We were just like, yeah, all DPS. And then we started realizing some DPS are burst DPS, some DPS are bruiser DPS, right? We started dividing them up, right? With supports, we still haven't fully divided them up. Okay, so this is gonna be my attempt at dividing up the supports and showing you guys the differences between the different types of supports. Okay, so there are 3 types of supports. Okay, number 1 is damage mitigation. All right, number 2 is mobility support, and number 3 is enemy disruptors. All right, so that's the 3. Damage mitigation, mobility support, enemy disruptors. Those are the three times, and we're gonna go one by one with them. And I'm gonna explain to you what weapons work in those fields and why they work in those fields, as well as, you know, the gear that they wear and tips and all that, right? Same thing that we did before. So, and remember, again, if you guys have any questions about anything, drop it in the chat. I am looking at the chat. I don't think anyone's typed anything for a little bit, but I don't know. Maybe my fucking thing is frozen. I don't know. Anyway, so damage mitigation. That's the first one. Damage mitigation. So the damage mitigation supports are, generally speaking, okay. So it used to be, and this is why I say it used to be, because I wrote this this episode back in December, okay? And so back in December, Great Arcane hadn't been changed. So I had put it into damage mitigation, but it's wrong. Great Arcane is not damage mitigation anymore. But it used to be Enigmatic and Great Arcane. Why? Because Enigmatic and Great Arcane, as it used to be, just soaking up the knowledge like it's fun. Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate it. It's good, man. It's good. I just, because I'm kind of like my screen is fucked up. I'm not sure if like this thing is freezing up on me or not, but it's okay. Don't worry about it. So the damage mitigation, it was Enigmatic and Great Arcane used to be, right? Before they changed it. So this style of support is very important because it's the one that basically ensures that the Zerg does not die. Okay, but this is very different from the enemy disruptor supports, right? Because I told you there's going to be enemy disruptor support. Enemy disruptor stops the enemy from engaging or slows the enemy down from engaging. Okay, damage mitigation instead either assist in like resistances, shields. It assists in absorbing the damage. All right, so damage mitigation helps in absorbing damage. Okay, so there's Enigmatic, Great Arcane. All right, now I will say this: there are other weapons that are damage mitigation weapons. I didn't include them here because they're not used like ever. But I think that's a mistake. Okay, I'll put it this way: a damage mitigation weapon could be something like God, what is it called? The quarterstaff that reduces enemy damage. If you guys know what I'm talking about, drop it in the chat. Like, it's literally not been used in years. This is why I don't remember the damn weapon's name. All right, but it reduces enemy damage, right? It's the one where you throw it and it's an AOE and it goes in circles in like a 6 meter radius or something. Monk staff, yes, monk staff. I think that's what it's called, monk staff. Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Starlord. So, yeah, so monk staff, yeah. I mean, listen, it's damage mitigation, right? Because you're reducing the enemy incoming damage. Okay, that is damage mitigation. It's not about stopping the enemy. Instead, it's about being able to absorb damage. Okay, now I'm not saying that monk staff is really good and you should use it. I'm not advocating for that, right? Because the problem with monk staff is not the E, it's the Q and W, right? It doesn't make sense. The Q and Ws don't make sense for quarterstaffs to be able to play that role. But if a quarterstaff suddenly got added, I don't know, a W that, if quarterstaff got the W from the hammers, the W that's the water, the like the water thing, right, where it pushes everybody away from that point. If the quarterstaff got that W, suddenly the fucking monk staff would be incredibly strong, because then you would use that as a W to make sure that your Zerg declumps. You use your E on the enemy as they're engaging to reduce their damage, right? So again, these are the things that we got to think about. It's not just the E, right? Because the E for monk staff is not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. But the Q and W don't make sense. But for Enigmatic, it does make sense. Great Arcane, they changed it, so it's not part of this anymore. So it's Enigmatic, okay? Enigmatic, you have the Q, which is like either a silence or a shield. Either or works. Either or is good, right? The W, you usually will want to run like a cleanse on the W for Enigmatic. Because again, you're trying to mitigate the enemy damage, right? How do you mitigate the enemy damage with a cleanse? Well, it's a cleanse that also gives you mobility. Okay, so if you see an enemy clump a Zerg up, right, you drop your cleanse on top of that. Number one, you just cleanse them. Number two, you gave them a speed buff, so they're gonna get away from that center faster. And then you drop your E on top of that, and in the guys that do end up getting hit, they end up getting hit for less because your Enigmatic E is stopping it, right? So again, it's not about stopping the enemy from engaging, but rather to assist your Zerg in absorbing that damage, okay? That's the damage mitigation support, and it's very different from the other two. I'll explain later. But the helmets that are used with Enigmatic, I've seen many different ones, right? With Enigmatic, I see like Phase Scale hat is not bad at all, right? Because it makes it uninterruptible, right? Assassin Hood, I've seen it a lot because it does have a higher cooldown. And so Assassin Hood makes sure that you have a cooldown every time the enemy engages. So it does make sense. This is one of the few moments where I say Assassin Hood makes sense, right? Because your cooldown is too high, right? So it makes sense. Another helmet, I know that some people like to run Cleanse helmet, but I feel like it's a little overkill with the Arcanes running Cleanse on the helmet and Cleanse on the W. It seems to be a little overkill. I mean, if you don't have a lot of Cleanse in your Zerg, then I guess it makes sense just adding more Cleanse, but it seems a little overkill. The Knight helmet is also another good one for Enigmatics because it makes you uninterruptible to like pushes and things like that. And so that also obviously helps ensure that the Enigmatic channel E continues going, ticking, right? So those are the helmets that people mainly use for Enigmatic. The chest that people have used, I've seen so many different ones, and this is one of the ones that can be either cloth or plate, right? So for plate, usually I see Judicator armor with Enigmatic, okay, usually, but not always. Sometimes people run Demon armor with Enigmatic. I don't think it makes sense because if you think about it, Demon armor, you're channeling it when the enemy's engaging, right? But if you're Enigmatic, you have an E that you got to channel when the enemy's engaging, right? So it doesn't make too much sense. Also because the Enigmatic E is so long compared to like a Locust, right? It's so long. So therefore it's like the Demon just doesn't really make sense, right? If you're asking me between Demon and Judicator for Enigmatic, I'd say Judicator most of the time. For the cloth, it's usually Robe of Purity. That's usually what we see. And it's good, right? Because the Enigmatic, even though it's channeling, right? Enigmatic doesn't necessarily need to be closer to the front as healer, like a fallen healer needs to be. Okay, and the reason for this, and it's gonna be very like how do I say it? It's like a complicated answer. I'm gonna try to like explain it as simply as possible without giving too much detail because then we'll go on for like a while. Okay, but generally speaking, okay, an Enigmatic does not need to be all the way in the front because they don't necessarily need to anticipate the damage coming in. Why? Because they don't really have a cast time. It's kind of very quick, very fast where you just drop it, right? And then you're instantly like your first tick of shield is gonna go off, right? The radius I think is about the same, but the difference between Fallen and like Enigmatic in the positioning is because the Fallen, not only does the Fallen have a longer cast time, but also the Fallen is even after the cast, it still takes an extra like half second to actually pop the heal, right? So it takes a little bit longer. So Fallen healers need to anticipate damage, whereas Enigmatics don't have to anticipate damage. Do not get me wrong. It is better if Enigmatic players anticipate damage. It is better. Okay, obviously it's better, but I'm saying that they don't need to anticipate damage as much as a Fallen does. Okay, they don't have as much how do I say it? They don't have as much necessity. All right, let's just leave it there. All right, they don't have as much necessity as a Fallen. Okay, because of that, they can run Robe of Purity. Also, another thing, Fallen channels, and it's not a super long channel, right? But it's a little longer, okay? But it's not super long. Whereas Enigmatic, it's like it just pops and then it keeps ticking and ticking and ticking and ticking. The channel of Enigmatic is short in the sense of like activation, right? I think it's like 0.2 seconds, some shit like that, right? It's super short. But then after, it just keeps ticking and ticking and ticking. And while it's ticking, you can get interrupted. So Robe of Purity makes sense for Enigmatic, but it doesn't make sense for Fallen, because with Fallen, you don't need to stay there ticking and ticking and ticking. You just drop it and then you move on, right? So it's better to have the defensive with a Fallen, whereas Enigmatic, you don't really need it. Also, Enigmatic has a shield, and the shield follows the person around that you shielded, right? So if that person walks towards you, you're gonna get the shield yourself as well. So many times Enigmatics will get caught in the clump, right? Just because they got clumped or whatever, and it happens. And then they'll instantly cleanse themselves, which also cleanses everybody else. And then they pop the Enigmatic on literally the guy next to them. And so they get the shield, the defensive, right? They get the shield as well as giving the shield to everybody else around. So enigmatics have an inherent defensive in that sense. So they don't need to rely on cleric robe as much as Fallen does in order to have some form of defensive. Okay, so those are the 3 armors, generally speaking, for enigmatic. Is Robe of Purity, Demon Armor, and Judicator Armor. All right, out of those 3, I prefer the Robe of Purity. Makes sense. The Judicator works. All right, but the Judicator means that the shields are going to be significantly weaker. Robe of Purity means the shields are stronger, but you can't position yourself as far forward as you could with the Judicator armor. All right, the boots, for the most part, they all kind of run Graveguard boots. Some people are running like mercenary shoes with the enigmatic. That works also, right? But generally speaking, anything that allows you the ability to ensure that your channel doesn't stop. Okay, so Graveguard boots make sense. And because you're not really running face scale hat or knight helmet, right? I mean, you can, but most people run assassin hood, and so because of that, you don't have anything to ensure that like you don't get interrupted other than your Robe of Purity. And so having Graveguard boots also helps a lot. Your positioning as a enigmatic player, as a damage mitigation support, is going to be near the center. Okay, near the center, because most of the enemy engages are going to happen near the center. So you need to be within a good distance to be able to heal the center, or not heal, sorry, to shield the center, right? But generally speaking, you don't want to be as far forward as a Fallen. You can take a step back. That's okay. If you are running Judicator armor, then step up a little bit more. That's okay. You can do it. You might as well do it, because it's going to help you assess the enemy and anticipate. Because again, anticipating the enemy is better than just reacting to them. Okay. The tips. I already mentioned some of them, like you anticipate the enemy engages, things like that. But one of the other tips that I haven't mentioned is you got to try to find good angles to shield your Zerg. Remember that you are a very high value target. As an enigmatic damage mitigation support, you're a very high value target. Okay, you're not as high value as a healer, but you're a very high value target because there are not a lot of enigmatics in a Zerg. You can say, oh, there is a lot. Yeah, okay, but there's 4, generally speaking, there's 4 healers to every party, right? And usually there's only 1 or 2 enigmatics per party, 2 at most, right? So if you think about it, like enigmatic, you don't have a lot of them in the fights. You don't have a lot of them. So therefore, killing 1 enigmatic is a big deal, okay? So you have to stay alive. But in order to stay alive, you have to find good angles that are going to help you achieve your goals, but yet not be vulnerable to even being interrupted. Like when I play D-Tank, I love going into the enemy back line and finding their fucking enigmatics just so that I can interrupt them, right? And the enigmatics that know how to position themselves, they know how to kind of hide in the Zerg, okay? So make it hard for other enemies to try to find you. The harder it is to find you, the harder it is going to be to stop you from doing your job, all right? So moving on to the next part, it's going to be the mobility support, all right? So mobility support, I mean, it's kind of pretty self-explanatory, but I mean, most of you guys are probably thinking, oh, it's a cult for sure, right? Well, yeah, absolutely, a cult, because a cult gives you mobility, right? But Locust also falls under mobility support. Now, Locust helps for damage mitigation because of its resistance boost. However, it is not used for that, okay? Some people use it for that, but generally speaking, Locusts are primarily to ensure the mobility of the Zerg, right? This is why I told you, not all supports are the same. They have different goals, right? They have different goals and they have different ways to achieve those goals. So mobility support is Locust and Occult, okay? So Locust allows the Zerg to be able to move freely without being stunned, rooted, or slowed, right? Unless it's like a icicle that you can't really cleanse it. But essentially, it allows you to keep cleansing the Zerg so that they can walk through unimpeded. Especially important in chokes. And guess what? I don't care if you fight only open world. Eventually, you're going to get to a choke, even in the open world. Chokes are extremely important in ZvZs. And so therefore, you're going to have to fight on chokes at some point. So having locusts is incredibly important. If you do not have locusts, you might as well forget about pushing a choke, because you're never going to be able to against an enemy Zerg that is well prepared. You're not going to be able to push a choke without Locust. It's that simple. So mobility support is extremely important. Occult, on the other hand, does a different job. They do the same thing as in mobility support, but Occult does something different. Instead of ensuring that your Zerg can move freely, it actually speeds your Zerg up and makes you move quickly, where you can actually go and do rotations faster. You can engage faster. This is used all the time with bomb squads, right? A lot of times people are like, oh my God, how do those bomb squads run so fast? Well, it's because they're running on Occult staffs, right? So Occult is very important, but not just for bomb squads, also for the regular Zerg. So many times you see this, and I actually have seen Escalation does this, and I know that Sex and Flex has done this as well, where they run 1 or 2 occults in the main Zerg to try to speed up the Zerg to make sure that they're able to out-rotate their enemy even better. So if you think about how many times you try to run into an enemy Zerg, and then your caller's like, you know, we got to get to the East Choke faster than them. We have to get there faster. We have to get there faster, right? This is where occults come in handy, because if you have occults and the enemy doesn't, guess what? You're going to get to that choke faster, and now you're going to win position, or you're going to have some form of advantage. That is invaluable, right? Having that extra mobility is so important. Now, I will say there are other things, and I haven't mentioned battle mounts. I will do a battle mount episode eventually, but battle mounts like the Beetle W gives a speed boost. Okay, the Beetle W speed boost is very important for this as well. Also, generally speaking, all arcanes that run cleanse, they have a cleanse that also gives like a 30% speed boost. When you're rotating and trying to out-rotate the enemy, the biggest tip I can give you as for like arcane supports, use the cleanse to cleanse the back line of your Zerg to make sure that you guys are running faster. Okay, it is very important. Trust me, it will be a life changer, and the caller is gonna love it, because his Zerg is gonna stay on top of him the entire time, and he's gonna be able to play much better, and you guys are most likely going to win more simply because you decided to cleanse the back line and speed them up, even when they don't need the cleanse from stun, root, or slow or whatever. Just cleanse the back line to speed them up. Okay, don't underuse that ability. It's very important. So the helmet pieces for mobility support. Night helmet. Sometimes it's being used, but honestly, you don't need it with either, because Locust has the channel where it's uninterruptible, and Occult doesn't have a channel, right? So you don't need it. But Night helmet is important for all the Zerg, right? So you might as well put it somewhere. So that's why a lot of people run Night helmet with Locust or Occult. Cleanses, like the cleanse leather cleanse, right? It's okay. Again, you already kind of have a cleanse on your W, and if you're a Locust, you literally have a cleanse E, right? It's not bad because cleanse is just good, but like I said earlier, it's kind of overkill, right? But one of them that is very important for Occult and Locusts is Assassin Hood, right? And again, I tell you guys, I shit on Assassin Hood all the time until it makes sense. Right? If it makes sense, it makes fucking sense. Use it, right? So Assassin Hood is very important for Locusts and Occults because of the higher cooldown on Locusts, but also because if you have Assassin Hood on Occult is not a weapon that you use on like engages only, right? Your Zerg is moving at all times. Like, look at the fight that we're watching right now, right? Like, let me watch this. Like right now, they're walking towards the enemy north, right? And it's like, what if they have what if they have like speed boosts? Look, there's an Occult right there in the southwest, right? I don't know if you guys saw it, but there's literally an Occult, and now they caught them, right? They caught the enemy Zerg. It's like having these things, now they can channel their Assassin Hood, reset it, and get ready for the next mobility. Whether they're gonna flank east, west, south, whatever it is, having that mobility is incredibly important. So Assassin Hood for Occult also makes sense. Okay. Now, for the chest pieces, we usually have Demon Armor and Judicator Armor. If you're in a bomb squad and you're running Occult, then it's totally different. I'm talking for the Zerg, okay? For the main Zerg, usually you're going to run Demon Armor or Judicator Armor with Locust or Occult. I know a lot of people like Demon Armor a lot with Locust. Personally, I don't really like it, but it does make sense because the Locust E is not that long, okay? It's not that long where you can't channel the Demon Armor. And the Demon Armor gives an extra defensive for the Zerg while your Locust E is cycling its cooldown, right? Now, Personally, I prefer Judicator armor because it's safer, because I don't want a Locust, which is like a very, very important part to my Zerg. I don't want a Locust to be in danger of dying by reducing his own resistances. But people like it. It's okay. I prefer Judicator armor. Judicator armor is safe. It gives good resistances and it boosts heals, right? And Judicator armor is extremely important for especially those fights that are very back and forth, and every engage there's only 1 or 2 people dying on each side, but there's a lot of damage being put out from both sides. And so what happens in those fights is the healers start to run out of mana because they can't keep up. Now, if you have a bunch of Judicator armors, ensuring that the heals are stronger, then the healers can manage their mana even better, right? So Judicator armor, very, very important across the board for the Zerg, and it makes sense with Locust and Occult because you're not necessarily having to do anything with that chest piece, right? You don't need a cloth to make your cleanse better or something. You don't need it. So Judicator armor, demon armor usually is what works. For the boots, I know some people like to run Guardian boots with Locust. Listen, I love Guardian boots. Personally, I think Guardian boots are amazing, right? I've worn Guardian boots for like 3.5, 4 years at this point, right? I just don't understand why you would run it with Locust. I feel like with Locust you kind of don't need it. But then again, it's like I told you guys, you don't really need any specific armor with Locust and Occult, right? So you're kind of free to choose a lot of different things. People like running it Guardian boots with demon armor. I know that people like doing that. They like Guardian boots with demon armor because then they pop their gig on their boots, and then they pop the demon armor, and that way they don't die, which I'm all for it, but then you don't have a lot of mobility. But I know that some other people like using like Boots of Valor, Graveguard boots, so that they can stay more closer to the front and assess the enemy. That way they can stand in the front looking at the enemy and cleanse wherever it's needed every single time, right? A Locust should never be in the back. Occults can be pretty much wherever they want, but mobility is very important. And so having something that allows you to stay mobile as a cult also makes sense. So Boots of Valor, Graveguard boots, they make sense. Some people have used mercenary shoes. I feel like this is an overstep. I don't think mercenary shoes fit with Locust or Occult as well as some of these other ones. So generally speaking, the biggest tip I can give to Occult and Locust players, to mobility support players, okay, the biggest tip I can give you guys is don't wait for the caller to tell you what to do. And listen, this goes for everybody, but it's more important for Locust and Occult. Why? Because Locust and Occult, you guys have to understand that everything you do is kind of on your own. Okay, it's kind of on your own. You get to do whatever the fuck you want, whenever the hell you want. You know, like Locust, you might get in trouble because you use the E on the wrong spot or whatever. But it's like, listen, at the end of the day, you don't have the same cooldowns as the Zerg, right? You have a longer cooldown as the Zerg, and then you have Assassin Hood, which is gonna make your cooldown shorter than the Zerg, and then it's like it's all over the place, right? So you have to manage your own cooldowns. Now, when it comes to managing your own cooldowns, you have to understand that you have to place your E and your mobility, right, whenever you see that it should be needed. You cannot go and be like complacent and be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, we're just rotating right now, so we don't really need a speed up like Occult, right? It's like, no, man, if you're rotating, pay attention. Where are you rotating? Do you need to get there quickly or no? If you do, then pop the fucking E, right? If you're a Locust, look at the minimap. You gotta open up that minimap. And if you're rotating somewhere, open up the minimap as a Locust and be like, oh, where are we walking to? Oh shit, the enemy's pushing us into a choke. I'm gonna make sure that I have my E up when we do cross that choke. So it's like, oh, the enemy's engaging right now. I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna hold my E because I know that I'm gonna need it on that choke, right? So that kind of stuff, managing your cooldowns is very, very, very important for everybody, but it's more important for Locust and Occult. So that's the mobility support. And by the way, a Zerg that doesn't have mobility will die 9 times out of 10. Why? Because the enemy is going to wrap you around from all sides, and that at that point you're basically screwed. Okay, so mobility is extremely important in this game. Absolutely important. All right. The last piece of the supports is the enemy disruptors. Okay, The enemy disruptors, I mentioned it earlier. All right, enemy disruptors are those supports that instead of doing what the damage mitigation does, where it's you allow your Zerg to absorb damage, instead of doing that, you actually stop the enemy from engaging you, or make it harder for the enemy to engage you. Okay, so it's very, very similar to disengaged tanks. Okay, but this is a support disengage as opposed to disengaged tanks. This is disengaged support, I guess you could say. All right, so these are the enemy disruptors. The weapons are Icicle. That's the number one. Okay, that's the absolute number one. Okay, but then you also have other ones. You have One-Handed Arcane. Okay, that's the one that throws the black orb that purges in silence. Okay, it's kind of like a ranged heavy mace. Okay, One-Handed Arcane is amazing. Okay, Life Curse is also important for enemy disruption, because Life Curse, usually you would want to run the root W on the Life Curse. Okay, I know you can say, oh no, what, the Pierce is so great. Yeah, but it doesn't make sense, right? Focus on your job. Remember, I've said that so many times. Focus on your job. The job here is if you're going to be a Life Curse, your job is to impede the enemy. Right now, you can use your E offensively or defensively. That's fine, right? That's beside the point. I'm saying in general, you can use that W to root the enemy and stop them from moving. So if the enemy's coming in to engage, you can root the enemy as they're coming in to engage. It helps slow the enemy down. So those are the main three: Icicle, One-Handed Arcane, and Life Curse. Okay, those are the main three for enemy disruptors. Now, there's one more that we just added, right? Because because they got changed, and that's the Great Arcane, right? So Great Arcane kind of comes to the top of this list as an enemy disruptor. Great Arcane is incredibly strong, incredibly strong. I cannot tell you guys how, honestly, like, I'll tell you guys the truth. I think it needs a nerf. Like, legit, I think it needs a nerf. Like, just plain out, I think it's OP. So what I'm saying is, enjoy it while we have it, because I really don't think it's going to stick around this long, because it's so good. So many people are not using Great Arcane. Why? Because so many people are disillusioned by the fact that it just got nerfed. So people are like, oh, it got nerfed, it sucks now. It doesn't, man. It's fucking incredible. It's just a different role. That's all it is. It's a different role, right? So essentially what I'm saying is Great Arcane, Icicle, One-Handed Arcane, and Life Curse are the main pieces of enemy disruptor. Goku says, any tips for curse user and healer? Well, I already gave tips for healer. So if you want, just watch the VOD after. But curse user, what specific curse are you talking about? Because if you're talking about like damage support, right? Damage support is different than what we're doing today. Today we're doing supports that are more for like enemy damage mitigation, mobility support, like arcane type shit. Okay. If you're talking about Life Curse, yeah. So I was talking about Life Curse. So yeah, I will keep talking about it. Don't worry about it. But yeah, I'll keep talking about it for sure. For Life Curse. So the helmets for these are going to be Night Helmet. Why Night Helmet? Because it allows you to move around freely towards the enemy. Okay. Why do you need to move around freely towards the enemy? Well, because you got to be able to stop the enemy. You need to be close to the you need to be on the face of the enemy. In order to stop the enemy from doing whatever the fuck they're going to do, you need to see them coming before everybody else, right? So you got to play like a disengaged tank. Now, here's the thing. You don't have the HP of a disengaged tank, right? So then you need to use other things to your ability. So things like Life Curse. What does Life Curse have that a Growth Keeper or Heavy Mace doesn't have, right? So if you think about it, Heavy Mace and Growth Keeper, they have more HP, right? So generally speaking, they're going to be more survivable than like a Life Curse. But think about this. A Life Curse has the ability to do whatever they're going to do at a distance, right? The Root W and the E are both at a distance. So therefore, use the angles, right? Make sure your positioning is always on the flanks, because you are going to have great angles no matter what. Okay, you don't need to be right at the very tip top front. You should be very close to that front, but you can actually move a little bit left and right. Whereas, and also use the terrain to your advantage. That's a big tip for enemy disruptors supports. Use the terrain to your advantage. If you have a wall, or even a fucking rock, or a tree, like look at the video we're watching right now. Look at those rocks on the right side, right on the east side. See these rocks and these trees? Like, stand behind them, right? Stand behind them. Look, there's a fucking life curse literally right there southeast of the guy that we're watching. He's literally south, right? And it's like he turns around and does something, right? He drops a Q, he drops a W, he drops whatever. And then he turns around and he keeps walking in other direction, right? And the guy's never able to catch him. That's the point, right? Use that. But that's not just for life curse. That's for one-handed arcane. That's for icicle. Use your range to your advantage, okay? So Night Helmet makes sense because sometimes they're going to try to kill you. They're going to try to clump you and dump you because you're annoying, right? Your job is to be annoying. So having a Night Helmet allows you to escape those scenarios. Assassin Hood is sometimes used as well. I don't like it as much here, simply because I get why people use Assassin Hood, because it gives you better cooldowns. You're able to disrupt the enemy even more. But what does Assassin Hood make you do? Assassin Hood makes you stop moving, and it makes you have to channel it, right? So if you stop moving and you start channeling something, then you become vulnerable. You shouldn't stop in front of the enemy Zerg and channel a fucking thing, because then if they decide to full go clump and dump on you, like, you're dead, right? Remember, mobility is your key here, because you're a ranged support, right? Or a ranged, I should say a ranged like disengaged tank, right? So you really gotta make sure that you're staying mobile. So Assassin Hood does not make sense. You can say, oh, well, I'll just walk to the back of my Zerg and then like channel the Assassin Hood back there. It's like, no, because then you literally just walked yourself away from the enemy. You need to stay up there, right? It's very important. So Assassin Hood does not make sense here. But Judicator Helmet does make sense. Judicator Helmet is very, very strong. It has a very large AoE, right? The stun is pretty good. A lot of people don't use it. Some Zergs still use it quite a bit. Most Zergs are not using it much. It's still on the field no matter what. But essentially, Judicator works really well for like Icicle, One-Handed Arcane, and Life Curse. Why? Because you're at the front. And sometimes you need to walk back, right? Because the enemy's going to try to get you. So having that extra little stun on the enemy as you're walking away from them is very useful. Also, if the enemy tries to run past you and ignore you, as they're running past you, you can drop that Judicator Helmet and stun all of them, right? So you make it so that they have to choose whether to run past you and have to deal with a Judicator Helmet disrupt, or try to just out kill you. But then you have the ability to kite them because of your mobility and the Judicator Helmet, right? So Judicator Helmet makes a lot of sense. Another one that does make sense is a cleanse here, because usually they're gonna try to stun you to try to kill you, right? Cleanse yourself and then you're gonna be okay. So that's another one that also works here. Now for the chest pieces for enemy disruptors, Duskweaver armor is the #1 most OP armor right now in the game. The only thing is that you can't use it too much. So you have to coordinate with the rest of your Zerg. Make sure you don't have more than 1 Duskweaver armor per party. Otherwise, you're going to be cucking each other and it's not going to be a fun time. But Duskweaver armor, very, very strong. Again, if they want to try to catch you, they're going to try to sprint towards you, right? Drop a Duskweaver armor, you purge their fucking sprint, and you keep walking your own way, right? They can't catch you. So it's great. Night armor also makes sense because why? Because again, you're trying to disrupt the enemy. So if the enemy is trying to engage, full-blown engage, you use a night armor, you wind wall them back, and you stop a lot of them from actually engaging. Or at least you force them to like go a different route and go around you or whatever, right? It buys time. It makes sense. Demon armor also makes sense sometimes, okay? And when I say sometimes, it depends on how your Zerg is playing. If you're playing on like chokes and stuff, demon armor would make sense because you're ranged, right? So you can still cast all your QWE because you're ranged. And because you're casting at a distance, you're in range to like demon armor your allies, right? To help them out. Now, when you're kind of in a kite mode, demon armor doesn't help too much, except for if you're kiting and the enemy tries to catch you, you can pop your demon armor and it makes you invulnerable to like stuns, roots, and slows, right? So then that helps you get away. But it is very risky because you're reducing your resistances, okay? So demon armor, it's situational. That's what I can say. It's situational. If you decide to run demon armor with as an enemy disruptor support, I don't think it's bad. I just think it's you have to know how to use it. That's all it is. Another armor that is commonly used with enemy disruptors is Armor of Valor, right? And Armor of Valor makes sense because when people engage you, you're gonna be able to silence them all, right? So again, if you're ranged, it's the same mentality as demon. If you're ranged, you're gonna be closer to your Zerg, where if the enemy decides to clump and dump, you can use Armor of Valor on top of your Zerg to make sure that they all get silenced. It's not incredibly amazing. Armor of Valor in general is not incredibly amazing, but I've seen it being used, and I've seen it be very, very powerful, especially nowadays that we're having siege bow bomb squads or siege bows in general, right? Armor of Valor is a direct counter to siege bow. Okay, so if we're seeing the rise in siege bow, maybe we should start also seeing a rise in Armor of Valor, right? Because it's the natural counter. Okay. Now for the boots, any sprint is fine, but having the refreshing sprint from the leather shoes, the one that reduces cooldowns, it's gonna be very helpful, because having a couple seconds less cooldown is gonna be very important when you're trying to, stay on top of the enemy at the same time not letting them catch you, right? So it gives you the ability to have faster cooldowns. It's gonna be great. Graveguard boots are also very good. Boots of Valor are also very good. Those two work hand in hand because they're very similar in the sense that they allow you to basically not get stunned, rooted, or slowed, right? So it helps a lot. Graveguard boots, Boots of Valor, they're very, very good. If you're running like Boots of Valor with like a one-handed arcane or an icicle, I promise you 9 times out of 10 you're not gonna die. Even if you get caught by the enemy or whatever, you're most likely always gonna live. Okay. The Guardian boots, sometimes people use them, but the thing is Guardian boots are gonna make you very immobile. And remember, your strength here is gonna be mobility, right? So Guardian boots, I personally have used Icicle with Guardian boots, and it works because the W has a good mobility, but it's tough. It's very tough. It's very, very tough. All right. So yeah, that's it for the boots. That's all there is for the boots. For the helmets and the chest. The positioning for these, I kind of already explained it. Generally speaking, you want to be close to the enemy, right? You want to be very, like, you're pretty much the front line. You're part of the front line. You really are. But you want to stay mobile, right? You don't ever want to just get comfortable, because then the enemy is gonna catch you when you're not looking. Okay, you have to play mobile. Go in towards the enemy, use the range, right? Drop a Q, drop a W, drop your E, and then walk back again, and then walk back and forth. Every time your W's up, come and use it, right? Don't forget, if you're a life curse, right? If you're a life curse, don't forget that your W, your root W, also pops Fort Sterling capes. Okay, so if you see an enemy is coming up to you, just use the root, even if you don't need to, just because you might pop a Fort Sterling or two. Okay, and that might lead to getting those enemies clumped and dumped, right? So it's very, very important that you're active with your Qs, Ws, and Es, right? If you're an Icicle, don't just use the W to the one that makes you jump, right? The blink. Don't just use the Icicle W to get away from the enemy. Use it better, right? Get inside the enemy and then jump out of them and root a lot of them, right? Don't just root one or two because you're running away panicking. Root as many as you can, right? Be as how do I say this? Be as efficient. There you go. Be as efficient as you can with every single one of your skills. It's very, very important. All right. Also, the Icicle has the new Q. It has like 30% slow or whatever. That one's very, very good. Don't think that it's useless. Man, the other day I was fighting a ZvZ, and there were 2 Icicles on the enemy Zerg who literally non-stop dropped Qs on me. Non-stop the entire fucking ZvZ. Man, I can't tell you how limited my mobility felt. And it's just 30%. But dude, it's incredibly annoying to not be able to move the way you're used to moving around, right? So yeah, the Icicle is an incredibly strong option right now, more than it ever was. All right. So for the tips for enemy disruptor supports, okay, be patient. Okay, be patient. Don't try to make huge plays every single time. All right. Be picky. Pick and choose where you drop your Qs, where you drop your Ws, where you drop your Es, but stay active with them, right? Just like I'm saying, use them as much as possible, but don't just drop your shit and move on with your life. Make sure you're dropping them on targets that make sense. So think about this. If if I'm an Icicle player and I see the enemy caller walking up to me, I don't need to use my W, right? I don't. But I'm going to walk my ass up to him and use my W and root his ass. Why? Because 1 second root on the caller means that he cannot see what he wants to see for 1 more second. So I just disrupted the entire Zerg. By disrupting and slowing the enemy caller for 1 second, I essentially just disrupted the entire enemy Zerg for 1 second, right? It's very, very important, okay? Same thing with the life curse root, right? Do the same thing. Drop a life curse root on it, right? Or if you see a bunch of healers clumped up, even if you're not going to hit it, just root them. Fuck them. Make them get stuck there for a second or two. Trust me, it becomes very frustrating for them because they feel like they cannot move around freely. And that allows the enemy Zerg to start making mistakes. Okay? So be patient, but at the same time, use your skills as much as possible when it makes sense. Okay? Don't just be like, well, I'm going to drop something here and I'm going to drop something there. No, just like I mentioned with the Locust earlier, open up your mini map. Understand where the Zerg is moving to. If you're moving into a choke, if your Zerg is getting pushed to a choke, maybe you should stop using your QWE for a second. Let them come back up. So that way you stop everything when the enemy's actually going to engage you on that choke, right? But then it's like, oh no, I wasted everything and now we're at a choke. We're out dead. And it's like, oh no, it's not my fault. I was on cooldown. No, it's your fault because you shouldn't have been on cooldown, right? So that's a very key component to being an enemy disruptor. And then after we're done here, I'll show you guys a video if I can find it. I'll show you guys a video where I do something similar like that. I wasn't running enemy disruptor. I was on a heavy mace disengaged tank, but I'll show you guys essentially what I'm talking about. So the last part is general tips for all supports, okay? Remember, this is Alpha Omega University, right? Alpha Omega means from the beginning to the end, all right? That's what it means, all right? Well, the supports are the Alpha and Omega, okay? And the reason that the supports are the Alpha and Omega is because they have responsibility in all aspects of the ZvZ. Okay? They don't only have responsibility when the enemy engages. They don't only have responsibility when we engage. They don't only have responsibility when we're brawling or doing whatever the fuck we're doing. Right? They have responsibility at all times. This is why the supports run their own cooldowns all the time. They're never on the cooldown with the caller. They do their own shit whenever the fuck they want because they have to. It's part of their job. Okay? Remember, I said earlier, the healer is the most important role of the Zerg. Because without healers, you guys all end up dying, right? But this is why I say supports are the Alpha and Omega. Because supports are the most powerful role. All right? They are the most powerful role because a single good support can lead to an entire victory in a ZvZ, or a single terrible support can lead to an entire loss in a ZvZ. And I'm telling you guys this because it is extremely important. It happens all the time. If you guys think I'm exaggerating, I promise you I am not. Okay? They are the most powerful role in the entire Zerg. Which means what? They should not be dying. So if you're a support, you better make sure that you don't go sacrificing yourself like an idiot. And if you're a healer, make sure that if you got a chance to save either a tank or a support, that you always save the support. Okay? It's very, very important. Now, remember, as a support, you are your own caller. I've mentioned this multiple times now. You are your own caller, okay? You do not do whatever the caller says. You do whatever the fuck you want. But with that, right? It's like the quote from Spider-Man, right? with great power comes great responsibility, right? That's exactly what I'm saying here. You have a lot of power in a ZvZ, but that also means that you have a lot of responsibility. And if you're a person that doesn't deal well with responsibility, right? And you don't want to be responsible for the entire Zerg dying and it be your fault, then maybe you shouldn't play support. Because support is extremely, extremely important, extremely powerful, right? And you have to make your own judgments more than every other role in the entire game. More than every other role, you have to make your own judgments. Okay, so you have to, in order to make your own judgments, you have to learn how to use your skills at the best possible time. This is why I say, hit that fucking mini-map button, watch what the fight is going, see, oh, we're getting pushed into a choke, then I should save my E for that choke. Or we're pushing the enemy into a choke, maybe I should use my E's now to ensure that the enemy gets pushed into that choke, right? Whatever it is you're doing, make sure you understand why you're doing it. As a support, you can't be complacent, okay? At the end of the day, though, okay, you have to remember you are very powerful, okay? And I said, don't sacrifice yourself for other people. You shouldn't. Don't be an idiot and sacrifice yourself for other people. However, if you're like a locust or an enigmatic and you have your E channeling on a clump that is getting bombarded and you're getting close to dying, do not fucking dare stop that channel. You die so that the entire clump can live, because that's your job, right? It doesn't mean you're sacrificing yourself for them. It means you're doing your job. And if doing your job means you get to die, then that means you get to die. Okay? But what I mean by don't sacrifice yourself for people is don't go and be like, oh, there's these two people over there doing stupid shit. I'm going to go and make sure I save them. Don't do it. Let them fucking die on their own. But if you're saving an entire clump doing your job, then you better keep that channel going, even if it means you die. Even if it means you die. Right? Remember, great power, great responsibility. So that's it. That's the supports. They're the alpha and omega. The healers are the beating heart of the Zerg. All right? So with that, we're done with the entire series for the Zerg's compositions, the different types. Again, tomorrow we have a really important episode. Next week, we're going to start another series, and that's going to be the more detailed one where we actually are going to look at these individual weapons, individual players, and we're going to do more reviewing of videos, more understanding of those things, okay? Let me catch up on the chat here real quick. The new Q, yeah, Icicle, the new Q, yeah, it's amazing, man. Latorian said, I have an Icicle video, the only one I ever made. Send it to me. Maybe we'll watch it when we review the Icicles, man. Send it to me for sure. Send it to me on Discord. So I told you guys I was gonna, because we have a little bit of time. All right, we kind of went a little faster today. So I'm gonna see if I can find that video for you guys real quick. Let me see what I want to do. Here, I'm gonna do this actually. I'm gonna put this screen here real quick, and then I'm gonna see if I can find that video, just so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. Kind of like looking at the map, understanding the map, and then moving to, or like holding your choke, holding your chokes, holding your sorry, I'm reading shit. Holding your cooldowns until you get to that choke, right? And then that way you can use them appropriately there. Here, give me a second. I gotta check this out. I'm still reading chat, by the way. You guys can type. Okay, it is old though, but maybe something can be useful there. I mean, I'll tell you the truth, man. Not a lot of people play Icicle nowadays, so the majority of Icicle videos are gonna be old, just because people just don't play them that often anymore. I think they're still super important, but people just don't play them as often. I was with Team Casualty, or sorry, Take Care at the time. It was season 16. And it was a long video. Something Dawn. I think it's this one. Let me see. Let me see if I can. All right. I'm gonna share the screen again so you guys can see. All right. So I'm pretty sure it's this fight. If it's not this one, it's the next video that I have. Yeah, here we rotate around. So this was back in October 21st, 2022. The date's right here on the bottom. Actually, sorry, I didn't plan on doing this, but I just thought about it. That's why. So I mean, the episode's over, so you guys can hang out and watch what I'm trying to show you guys, or you guys can dip out. It's okay. By the way, this video is on my personal. It's not on the actual AO University YouTube. This is my personal. This is Kelron114 on YouTube. I have a lot of these videos up there, so if you guys want to see, I mostly play heavy mace, but I mean, if you guys want to see like my perspective, I usually upload with full comms. I don't think I have any videos that don't have comms, to be honest. Yeah, this is not the video. Nah, give me a second. I'll put it back on the other screen. Okay, I found it. All right, I found it. Let me just find a spot here. So this one was actually October 6th. So this is season 16, I want to say. Yeah, it's okay. These two fights were very, very similar. So here we were fighting against M3R. And so actually we had M3R that was fighting with us. It was Take Care and M3R fighting against Terra and Mars. We were heavily outnumbered here. But we end up winning the fight. But it was like a fucking 20-minute fight. So here like we're going back and forth. We end up rotating around at some point. All right, here it is. And I'll put the comms on it as well in a second. All right, so here I'm gonna play it from here. So I'm gonna full screen it here because I don't need the other stuff. So all right, Goku says, "Have you heard about Heaven Cries the Healer?" No, I haven't, but I'll look him up. Is he like really good? What guild is he in? Just let me know in the chat what guild is he in, and I'll definitely look at him. All right, so here we have Terra up in the north, right? We have Terra up in the north chasing us south. The blob on the southeast or on the far east that you see in the minimap, that's Mars fighting against M3R, right? And they're fighting on a choke over there. They end up fighting on that fucking choke for like 15 minutes straight. So it's literally a 1v1 Terra versus Take Care. And you see already like, it's not that these people are dead, the party. It's not that these people are dead. It's that a lot of them got queued out, right? So generally speaking, we've taken some casualties, but not a lot. But yeah, for the most part, we're heavily outnumbered here. So here up in the north is Terra coming down at us, and they're pushing us southeast here. I'm actually very far back. That's why you don't see my Zerg, because we were kiting literally for like fucking 5 minutes straight. Okay, so at this point we're hella spread out, and the enemy's on full push, right? So I'll play from here.
Rest pop, come through the 1x1 choke. Yo, I'm fighting.
So shit, I wanted to show you guys that. God damn it. All right, hold on. Let me see if I can pause it there. Yo. All right, so boom. So he says, come through the 1x1 choke, right? He means 1x1 because it's not like wide, so like a lot of people can't walk through it at the same time. It's like the width is what it's talking about. So This is Andrew calling. Andrew. So yeah, so Andrew's calling. It's Pull Up. If you guys don't know who Andrew is, it's Pull Up. That's his character name. So he's calling, and so he's telling us to go down this choke here, southeast, right? And so now I open up the minimap. And remember, I'm at the far back, right? Now, some of the guys went around the southwest and around, right? But I'm at the far back. I'm at the front of the enemy Zerg, and I'm walking. I'm literally the first line of defense, right? And so I look at this, and I literally see how I open up the minimap, right? This is what you guys should all be doing, by the way. Like, all supports, and especially all tanks, you guys should always be doing this, okay? Open up the minimap, look at what's going on. So I don't see the choke anywhere near me, but I open up the minimap just to check what's going on. And I see that we're walking by. Now look at my cooldowns. I have some of my cooldowns up, right? But not all of them. I mean, right now I can like stop or do whatever. I can use some of my cooldowns, but I choose not to. Watch what I do.
Yo, I'm fighting on the west blob. The west blob. Come through the one by one choke. Don't be scared. Come through.
So here I see the choke now, right? And I see that my Zerg is still on that choke. All it took me, like, look at all these guys on the bottom right of my screen. Look at all these guys. They're all on the choke, and I see a Juggernaut there. So I know that I have to buy time. So instantly I turn around and I snare charge these front guys, these first few guys. Why? Because it buys my Zerg 1 second of time, right? 1 second is very, very important, right? And if it means I die, then guess what? I died doing my job, so I don't care, right? So here I snare charge these guys.
Through the choke. Get ready to locus the choke. Locus the choke.
I purged and silenced them because I saw that some of them pop boots, right? So I'm trying to slow them down.
We're going through. Locus the choke as we're going through. They're going to try to engage you on the choke.
Look at that. All my Zerg is right here, and they're actually getting hit on the east side, right? So we're actually getting pressed from both sides here. So I have this entire flood northwest of me. What can I do? I can walk across, right? But we still have people in here. And if these guys walk completely across the choke, they're going to completely delete the back line of my Zerg because my Zerg is looking east right now because they're fighting on the east, right? And so I am literally the only thing stopping this entire Zerg from deleting the backline of my Zerg. Now, there's other tanks in here. Like I saw a Grove Keeper. One of our Grove Keepers was around here somewhere. But essentially, like, there's not a lot up here is what I'm saying. Oh, here, it's Meta Abuser, right? So it's like, there's not a lot of here. It's me and Meta Abuser, and I mean, that's pretty much it, right? Everybody else, I think this is an enemy. I don't know, I can't tell. So there's not a lot stopping them. So it's up to us to figure it out. But I wouldn't have known all of this if I hadn't opened up the minimap, if I hadn't looked. So what I do here is I can just walk across, right? I mean, I'll be fine. I can probably walk across, and I'm a tank. If I get caught, fuck it. But the rest of my Zerg is going to die. So this is what I do instead.
Choke. They're going to try to engage the choke. Come through the choke.
So I stand here in this corner, and I chill. And I wait, because I know the flood is coming. The flood is right here, and it's all coming, right? So I just chill here, and I wait. I'm going to move to the side, and then just let them come in and make them think that they have open access to engaging my Zerg.
Meta Abuser, come through the choke. Wingler, come through the choke. Come through the choke. Come through the choke. Sprint through the choke. 5.
So here's the flood, right? Here's the flood. And now I instantly pop my smoke bomb, right?
4, 3, 2, 1. Full sprint southeast. Full sprint southeast. Full sprint.
See how they're all silenced? Now they literally can't do anything. They cancel their entire engage just because of a smoke bomb. The only thing is here is that it was well placed and well timed. That's all it is, right? Well placed, well timed. Other than that, like, cause look, you have clothies all the way across on the southeast. They were gonna full send it, but because they got silenced up here, a lot of them, they decide to pull back.
Full sprint southeast, deep, and then kite southwest. Come southwest, south.
And now I just get out, right? Now you can say, oh, well, that was unnecessary, whatever. It wasn't, I promise you, because I've seen the other angles. And our entire Zerg was literally right here at this moment, right? Like, I'll show you guys another thing too. Like, I literally, this was actually today. I'll show you guys another video. Here, give me a second. I just uploaded another video today, and this time, so today this was a 21 UTC. It was Terra versus Wildcard, all right? And this is just literally a 20-second clip, so I don't have to find it. All right, so yeah, so this is Terra versus Wildcard. Wildcard is pinned on the south corner of the map here, and Arch is hitting them from northeast. Arch and Terra are working together here, and Terra is coming from the northwest here. So I'm with Terra at this point, right? And so here's where they come in from the wall.
Come south.
Yeah, they're moving away. You have space on the southwest, but
okay, come south. Hug the wall.
So here, their entire bomb squad comes in, right? This is like 5 siege bows, right? and our entire Zerg is over there, not prepared for this, right? They come in and they're gonna full bomb us, right? And it's like literally just the fact that I dismounted in front of my Zerg, they ignored me. You see, this is what I'm talking about. They ignored me. They ignored me because they're like, oh, it's just one guy, fuck him, right? So sometimes dismounting in the very front, sometimes just being in the very, very front of the Zerg is the most important thing that you can do to be able to survive, right? They ignored me. They just go past me. But remember what I said. The enemy has to choose. Either A, they ignore you and go past you and run the risk that you're going to stop them, right? Or B, they choose to full engage on you, but then you have a lot of survivability, so you're probably going to survive anyway, right? So this is what happens here.
Whoa, careful.
So I just cancel all of that. I mean, I didn't get one of them, right?
East 3, 2, 1,
and then on top of it, all the rest of the Zerg is coming in for the rest of the hit.
Smash the bomb, smash.
And now I smoke bomb them, right? And then we're about to counter engage here. Now we don't end up killing the clump because our DPS was too far back.
He's on the wall. One shot.
But like, that's what I'm talking about, right? Positioning. And look at my HP, right? Look at my HP. Yeah, I popped the gig, the Guardian Boot gig, right? But like, it didn't matter because I only took 800 damage, right? It's nothing, right? So this is what I'm talking about. Positioning is so important in this game, okay? And when you're a disruptor support or a disengaged tank, you have to make sure that you position yourself where the enemy has to choose. Either I full engage just you, or I try to run past you and hope that you don't stop everything that I'm doing, right? So at this point, my entire Zerg just survives because of this. Right, so I'll let her play the whole thing this time, so that way you guys can just watch the whole thing.
On the wall.
Come south.
Yeah, they're moving away. You have space on the southwest, but
okay, come south. Hug the wall.
See how I'm opening up the minimap, by the way? You guys always got to do that. All right, I'm gonna let her play.
Wall, listen. Yeah, wall. Careful. Bomb squad. East 3, 2, 1. Smash the bomb squad. Smash the bomb squad. Smash these on the wall. One shot.
So yeah, that's it, right? Like again, these videos are on my personal YouTube, right? So you guys can watch some of them or whatever. But yeah, essentially, like, what I'm saying is that this tactic doesn't only work for disengaged tanks, right? This tactic also works for disruptor support, right? It also works for even melee DPS, right? Even melee DPS. If you guys stand up here, you guys can do that, right? Take advantage of the enemy and their inability to make decisions because you're forcing them to make decisions, right? You're putting them in a position where they have to choose whether they kill you or whether they try to go past you. And if they decide to go past you, you need to make sure you punish them, right? So anyway, that's it. That's the end of the stream. Anybody get any questions? Drop them in the chat right now. I'll answer whatever we got, whether it's related to today or not. It doesn't matter. If you got any questions, drop them in right now. I'll give you guys a minute because I know it's delayed. Yeah. Appreciate you guys. The point is just to learn, right? Little by little. We all learn little by little. I mean, I know I'm the one sitting here kind of like explaining things to you guys and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I'm still learning too, man. I'm still learning too. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So many people try to pretend that they already know everything, right? And the truth is like there's no way, man. There's no way. This game, one thing I definitely have learned is that this game is a lot more complex than any of us ever realized many years ago, right? It's a lot more complex. There's a lot more possibilities in this game. There's a lot of different things that we can accomplish. And just like how I was telling you guys about Icicle, man, Icicle is incredibly amazing, right? But people are not using it. And it's like, it all comes down to why it works and does it work with your current Zerg, right? It's those kinds of things. But just because something is not used, I don't want you guys to think that just because something's not used, it's not good, right? Galatines weren't used at some point. I mean, I'm talking years ago, right? But Galatines weren't used at some point, okay? Brimstone wasn't really used at some point. Hand of Justice, literally a year and a half ago, Hand of Justice was considered like unplayable. Like a year and a half ago, literally, right? So yeah, I'm just telling you guys, be more objective, man. Be more objective. Stop criticizing different styles and different gear just because other people don't use it, right? I want you guys to be smarter than that. I want you guys to look at things and look at the potential that they have, right? And some things may have great potential, but it's kind of like, it only has potential if the entire Zerg plays differently. Then, I mean, okay, I understand, but at least you can see their potential, right? That's the key, right? So that's it. Let me see. Let me catch up on the chat here. Yeah, I'm glad you guys are learning, man. I'm glad you guys are learning. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. I've watched the Spear episode like 3 times, still going over all the episodes. Yeah, man. I mean, and that's why I have them on the YouTube, right? Because I know that a lot of times, like, you hear something one time and it just doesn't sink in, right? So you kind of gotta like rewind and you gotta listen. And the truth is the shit that I explain here, honestly, it's pretty heavy shit, right? Like, it's not things that you can just listen to and be like, okay, yeah, cool, no problem, right? You just gotta just understand it right away. Like, no, man, it's kind of it's very complex topics, right? But it's I'm trying to explain complex topics in ways that we can all kind of just little by little understand them, right? It's not about trying to just understand everything in one hit. It's just little by little by little. Starlord Latorian says it is a different content, way better than those endless, boring missed rat fights and corrupted dungeons. I mean, listen, some people like that, man. Some people like that. You know what I mean? Some people like. I don't like it. Fuck that. I don't like it. But I know that a lot of people like it. I mean, there's a reason those guys get a lot of views, right? Shit, more than me. I mean, but then I just started too, so it's it is what it is. I'm not concerned about it. At the end of the day, I feel like over time, more and more people will pay attention to the game, right? Because I like to view the game more like a research, right? Like you can actually like dive deep and understand heavy concepts, right? I like to look at the game that way, as opposed to just I'm gonna come out and just play and that's it, and not think about it. Like I think that's pretty boring. And I've kind of played this game for a while now, so it's kind of like my next step, right? So I like looking at bigger things. How do you grow your guild? Provide content. I mean, honestly, man, like, you'd be surprised how much people enjoy stability. So if you give them stable content, every single, like, let's say you say, oh, every day I'm gonna do a CTA at 18 UTC. Every day, no matter what. I don't know what we're gonna do, but we're gonna do something at 18 UTC. Just the fact that you have a stability on that, you're gonna have people that keep joining your guild, man. Just because they like knowing that at 18 UTC they have something to do. Whether that's something really fun or something kind of whatever, right? Latorian says, hope more people get interested in ZvZ content so SBI gives more attention to it. SBI is giving a lot of attention to ZvZ, man. Honestly, they are. They really, really are. The thing about it is that this is the reason I made the stream in the first place, right? There's not a lot of good, easy ways to learn ZvZ. There really isn't. If you think about it, like, other than like this stream, and this stream only teaches you some things, right? I can't teach you guys everything. I mean, eventually maybe, right? But it's like one stream at a time, right? We gotta take it step by step. But what I'm saying is, like, if you think about it, there's no way to actually learn everything about ZvZ to become a better player out there. There just isn't, right? Unless you're gonna go and like watch YouTube videos literally nonstop, hours upon hours upon hours for weeks and months on end, which is what I did years ago, right? There's not a lot of other ways to do it other than just going out in the field and dying nonstop. You like Mr. Miyagi? Hopefully, right? I mean, at the end of the day, there's people that disagree with me, right? And this is why on the first episode, I told you guys right off the bat, I said, at the end of the day, everything that I say in the stream is my opinion, right? There's a lot of things that are facts and opinions, right? But at the end of the day, everything I say here on the stream is my opinion. It's my opinion based on the experience that I have had in this game, which I've had a lot of experience in. But at the end of the day, I'm not the only one that has had a lot of experience in this game. So you know, you might hear some things that I say here that people don't agree with, and you know, maybe they're right, maybe I'm right, I don't know. But this is why I tell you guys, like, look at things like the Siege Bow, right? I told you guys back in December, I said, yeah, the Siege Bow is going to become meta, and the Siege Bow is going to push out the melee meta. It's already happening, right? It's already happening. So this is why I say it, because I want you guys to understand that, like, I'm not just bullshitting, you know. I'm not over here just, you know, talking out of my ass, you know. Like, I actually, like, every single one of these episodes, I did a lot of research from it, right? And people are like, oh, you're a fucking nerd. Yeah, I mean, sure, I'm a nerd. Then again, I'm fucking streaming a video game, right? So yeah, of course I'm a fucking nerd, right? So it's like, at the end of the day, it's the value that we get from it, right? I'm doing the research so that you guys don't have to, but I'm also pairing it with the experience that I have, and I'm trying to give that back to you guys so that you guys can play better out on the field. You know, better being a nerd than a geek. Yeah, I guess so, right? I guess so. Hey, but you know what? There's nothing wrong with geeks, man. You know, I like a lot of shit like that geeks like, man. Like, you know, Star Wars is cool. You know, I like Star Wars. I just don't get deep into it like a lot of people. But it's all right, man. There's all kinds of people out there. All right. Anyway, this is going on. It's a meme. It's a meme reel I saw on Instagram. Oh, I gotta look it up, man. Eldervine, what's up? Let's be real. We all are nerds. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? There's so many people that are like in the game. They'll go and say, oh, you know, I declare war on these other people in a video game, and it's like, yeah, fuck these people. I'm gonna log in every fucking day for 3 or 4 hours for 3 months straight, and then they go and turn around and be like, oh no, but I'm not a nerd. I'm not a nerd. What? I'm not a nerd. I mean, you know, it is what it is, man. It is what it is. Anyway, all right, I'll close it up. I will see you guys tomorrow. I know you, again, I said it this many times. Tomorrow is reset day. So if your guild's massing for NA, make sure you guys are there, man. Don't leave your guild hanging. All right. And reset day is a very good, important day to not miss. You want to try to be to as many reset days as possible. The reason for it is because reset day is one of the few days where you get to see an extremely large scale ZvZ unfold, right? Because it happens everywhere, and everybody gets to participate. It is very fun, and it's a very good experience to have. All right. And yeah, I saw it, Litorian. I appreciate you. What is reset day? You legit don't know, or you're just trolling? Listen. If you don't actually know what reset day is, I'm not gonna explain it right now because otherwise it's gonna take forever, and I kind of want to close it up because we're already past 2 hours. But reset day, okay, you know. All right. Well, anyway, for the people that don't know, it's okay. For the people that don't know, go on the Albion Online website and reset day. It's you know, they're gonna talk about it there. Go on the forums and shit. You can find out. They don't call it reset day. They call it invasion day. Okay, they call it invasion day. All right, so that's all it is. All right, anyway, I appreciate you guys. I will see you guys tomorrow. Again, tomorrow's an extremely important episode. If you don't get to watch it because you're doing reset day, that's totally fine. I promise I don't mind. It's not gonna hurt my feelings. You guys gotta go out there. You guys gotta learn firsthand experience, right? So that's important. But make sure you guys watch the VOD because it's very, very important. I'll post it. It's gonna be on Twitch, but I'll also post it on the YouTube channel. So just stay tuned for that. Drop a follow if you don't if you haven't followed. Drop a follow. Subscribe if you want to. The content is free. You don't have to subscribe, but obviously it helps me a lot. And yeah, I think that's it. I'll see you guys later. Appreciate you.